My name is Antoinette Peterson, and tonight I will be facilitating this meeting, hopefully in a fair way. I am not here tonight to ask you to support this proposed project, and I'm also not here to ask you to stop opposition if you are opposing the project. My role is simply to make sure that the process is explained clearly, and also that everyone has an opportunity to raise the issues of concern, and that the issues are recorded properly and correctly. So the meeting will be recorded as part of the public participation proceedings, and to make sure that we can post this information on the websites available. So we recognize that this is a high interest and for some a high emotion project. That is understandable. People have concerns about safety, trust, environmental sensitivities, heritage, concerned about fishers' livelihoods, job security, and local services, and whether this process is genuinely open. We would really like to make sure that we provide an opportunity for everyone to contribute their issues, and to also so inform the specialist studies to be undertaken as part of the impact assessment phase, and then also to make sure that these issues are captured, as I've mentioned. So just a few important framing points that I would like to highlight before we start, and that is that this meeting is part of an environmental impact assessment process. This is not the meeting that will decide whether this proposed plant will be built. It's not a referendum, but it's also not meaningless. So this is really an opportunity where you can still influence what is studied, how the impacts are interpreted, and eventually whether the process that was followed was fair and transparent. So in terms of language, we recognize that this is also an important, that accessibility is an important component of fairness of the process. Therefore, the main presentation will be in English, and we invite you to raise your questions during the discussion session in English, Afrikaans, or isiXhosa. We will be able to respond to that, make sure that your issues are understood and that it's captured correctly. And then just in terms of permissions, we would like, as part of the process record, just to take photos from the back. So we will not zoom in on anyone's face, and these photos will be just part of the meeting record. We also request that you please put your phones on silent or switch them off, and we kindly ask that you refrain from taking photos or recording the meeting. We will make an official recording available and share that with all our registered stakeholders. The main reason why we're asking this is just to protect the privacy of our attendees, and to ensure that everyone feels comfortable when they speak, and so that they can speak openly. And lastly, also to make sure that it is aligned with the data protection principles of the Protection of Personal Information Act. So can I please get an indication if it's okay with everyone for us just to take 2 photos from the back? Thank you. Thank you for supporting that. Right, so just before I carry on, we have copies of the presentation at the entrance. Hopefully you've taken one in the language of choice. They are available in English, Afrikaans, and isiXhosa. And then there's also an abbreviated background information information document, which is just a 2-pager, and the longer version of the background information document, or the non-technical executive summary of this draft scoping report, is available online, and we've got the posters up everywhere with the links. We will also provide that later during the meeting. Then moving on to the introductions, I'd like to just welcome our project team members, the applicant Eskom, Deirdre Herbst, and then you've got Sidika Toffee and Attila Els. And then from WSP we have Ashley Strong, she's the project manager. We've got Samira Ishmael, Tumi Matulwe, he will help us with photos, and then also, I don't see her now, but Natasha Pakwata, she will be taking the notes of tonight's meeting. I think it's important to also mention that WSP is the independent environmental assessment practitioner that's been appointed to manage this environmental impact assessment process. We are currently in scoping phase, which means that the issues you raise and the questions you ask, as I've mentioned, will still inform the specialist studies, and will also help the specialists to interpret the impacts correctly when we get to that phase. Then just a few guidelines for constructive conduct tonight. Kindly, as I mentioned, switch off your cell phones or put them on silent. If you need to take a business call or an emergency call, you're welcome to leave the room and take it outside. We're going to ask that we please speak one person at a time. We understand that strong opinions and diverse opinions are relevant in this meeting. Please raise your opinions, your views, your perspectives, but please do so respectfully. I'll manage the speaking order and try to give everyone an opportunity to speak. And then we request that the comments please relate to this project. The EIA is specifically focused on the development of a proposed nuclear plant, and we cannot necessarily address all the concerns, especially those related to policy development in the country, but we can record your issues and they will form part of the formal record of the documents that will be submitted to the competent authority. So our intention is really not to limit participation, but to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to be heard. Right, I think, yeah. So just to go through the agenda quickly, we've dealt with the introductions. Ashley will just share information on the public participation process, then move into the project description, and then what kind of alternatives are being considered, the specialist studies that will be undertaken, what the site sensitivities are, and some of the preliminary impacts that have been identified at this stage, and then lastly, before we move to the question and answer session, what the scoping phase recommendations are from the EP. So as I've mentioned already, I don't think I need to go through this in detail, but we are here as part of the scoping phase to present information about the project, and then to listen to your concerns, your questions, your issues. We may not be able to respond to all of them tonight. Some of the issues may only be addressed or responded to during the impact assessment phase, but we are going to try our best to answer as many questions as we can. And then we will also provide you with more information about the regulatory process, the time frames, because since we've seen you the last time, the legislation has changed, but Ashley will explain everything about that. And then just in terms of how this meeting will work, you've seen the posters up outside, there's a QR code. Please register as an interested and affected party. We communicate with registered APs, but that means we will keep you posted on progress, and we will also provide you with information on opportunities that you can participate at public meetings and contribute your comments. So during this meeting, you're welcome to verbally share your comments. You're welcome to scan the QR code to submit your comments in writing. Even after the meeting, you can also submit your comments in writing, or via WhatsApp, or you can call the office. The numbers are provided. And then the slides will obviously also be shared with all our attendees, and it will also be posted to WSP's website, and there's also a Delta-free website that you can access free of charge. And then lastly, all our comments, just the reassurance that the comments will be recorded and captured. Thank you very much. Ashley, over to you.
Do you want to just confirm that everyone's happy that the presentation's in English?
Yeah.
So I need to...
Everyone happy that the main presentation is in English, with questions in the language of choice? I forgot to introduce Tenga Dube, sorry. He's our Isitosa interpreter. Tenga, can I just see you? There you go. Tenga will be able to help if we need interpretation in Isitosa. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Right. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for being here to come through this evening. It's great to have you here. I know it's taking time, a valuable time out of everyone's week. So thank you for your participation in this matter. And I'm very glad that I can do it in English, because my Afrikaans and my Isikos is really not great. But we do have translators if we need them. All right, so why are we here? We are here to look at the proposed new nuclear power plant. There's been obviously we've seen this before. Different companies there has been an EIA done by Eskom before. Many years ago there were possible locations identified for the new nuclear power plant undertaken in the nuclear site investigation program, which was undertaken in the 80s, and that identified 5 different sites for future, that ticked all the boxes in terms of the International Atomic Energy Association, in terms of safety in a variety of different categories. We then had the Nuclear 1 EIA a number of years ago. It was started in 2017. I think when did it start?
We got the decision in
2017, the decision was received, and then it went through some appeals, and then some more appeals, and eventually the appeal was upheld last year in July, and the DFFE confirmed its original, the DFFE confirmed its original decision. And moving on from there, South Africa has run Kuberg for the last 40 years successfully, and now they are proposing to build another nuclear power facility of about 5,200 megawatts, and the 2 sites that are being considered in this EIA are Taste Pit and Bantams Klip. And obviously for this area, the Bantams Klip site is the one in the Eastern Cape, in the Western Cape. Right. In terms of policy, why are we here? The nuclear energy policy of South Africa outlines the principle which states nuclear energy shall be used as part of South Africa's diversification of primary energy sources. And this is then backed up also in the National Development Plan, or the NDP of 2030, which also looks at promoting the investigation of nuclear power. And in that again is backed up from the Integrated Resource Plan of 2025 that was published last year, which is also looking at planning for growing electricity needs and the need to potentially include nuclear power. So off the back of all of that, Eskom is looking at developing this new 5,200 megawatt nuclear power plant. And that's sort of the background as to where and how we came to be speaking to you here this evening. In terms of the application processes that we run, or that need to be run for the project, there's a couple of different things. We are running the environmental authorization process, which is this process, and why we are here talking to you tonight. This is the process that identifies the impacts that are relevant to all the other licenses that need to still come down the line. We do work a little bit in parallel with the heritage permits that are required. So we are required to submit our documentation to the relevant heritage authorities, and they will look at it and provide comment parallel to the EIA. And then there's two processes that will then only happen after the EIA process, and or once an authorization is received. So that authorization can be positive or negative. If it's positive, then Eskom can move forward and do the water use license process, application process, as well as the coastal waters discharge permit, which will then happen post the EIA. Then there's, on the end, there's a process that sits on its own, which is the nuclear installation site license application. And that's a complete standalone process, which is run through the National Nuclear Regulator, and that is also going to have its own public participation, so keep an eye out of that, because you will be able to participate in that process as well. But it's a standalone process from this particular, the EIA. But also, it's running concurrently with what we are doing. In terms of the EIA, we are operating under a different legislative regime at the moment from the previous EIA that was undertaken. The previous EIA that was undertaken had an EIA process that was essentially time limitless. So they could take as long as they liked to do the studies. They could also have essentially longer times of review, both for the public as well as for the authorities. Whereas now, since this is in 2017, the new EIA regulations came out, and they specify timeframes. So as the environmental assessment practitioner, once we submit the application to the competent authority, which in this case is the DFFE, we have 44 days to submit a final scoping report. Then the authority has 42 days to review that report and either approve the scope plan of study for EIA or reject it and send us on a different path. If they do approve it, then on that date of approval, we have 106 days to submit the final EIA report. So the new EIA process and the timeframes are in the legislation since 2017. They are really short. There are opportunities, however, so to ask for extensions, which we will do for the EIA phase. Unfortunately, it's not available for the scoping phase. So scoping phase, the public review period is 30 days. It just extends. You can only apply for that extension once you're in the process itself, and there's not actually time for you to ask for that extension in the scoping phase. But we are really busy preparing our requests for the EIA phase so that we can give people more time. So these are some of the dates that you can diarize. The EIA application was lodged at the beginning of the month, on the same day that the process started for public review. The public review will end on the 5th of May, so that's the time to have a look at the report that's online, send your comments in, participate, and we then have about 8 days after that to put everything together and submit it through to the DFFE. After that, we wait for them. So we assume and anticipate that the decision on the scoping report should be received in around July, and that the next EIA phase public participation will be in September of this year. So just to give you some ideas of where we're going in terms of the process. The public participation, who is included? Anybody and any individual, community, vulnerable group can be registered on the database. We started the process with a 6,000 grown to just over 10,000 to date. I'm sure it may grow some more as we go, but so far we've had a lot of interest and a lot of people have registered. So if you are here tonight and you've not registered on our database, please do register. There's QR codes, and Tamira can help you with the correct one to scan, and then there's an online form that you can complete and then send it through, and it will be put onto the database, and you'll receive all the communication going forward. How do we engage? We want to consider language, culture, heritage, tourism issues, commercial issues, and indigenous peoples as well. We want to make sure that we do a thorough consultation through all different various medias, newspapers, radio, Facebook adverts we've done already. We put site notice up, we've had pamphlets out. We're doing virtual and in-person meetings to try and make sure that everybody has the opportunity to come through. The virtual meetings are also there now, more important than ever, with the fuel price going up and people not wanting to really be out and driving around too much. And we also have targeted outreach to certain focus groups as well. We capture things on modern platforms. We have a dedicated public participation team led by Tumelo here, and we have a number of specialists, and of course the leads themselves that can, and of course the client, that can look at the concerns, respond to queries, etc. And everything is captured. In terms of the regulations, everything has to be captured and put out and commented on and responded to. And we capture oral and written comments, so even if you phone the office, someone will write down what you said and put it into the comment and response report. Everything goes into the EIA, everything is submitted to the department. That's why the public participation report is probably more important than the scoping report, because it captures every step of the way the public participation to date. All right. The permitting process looks at why are we doing a full EIA? Because we trigger the listed activities listed on the screen. There's quite a number of them. There's listed listing notice 1, 2, and 3. Listing notice 2 is the one that requires the full EIA process to be undertaken, and then we encompass all the rest in that. So we are doing it in terms of the legislative framework, and if you do need a full write-up and description of all of these activities, there's a number of them. There's all different things, from generating power from nuclear power, or land vegetation clearance of more than 20 hectares, etc., etc. So the detailed descriptions of all these listed activities are included in Chapter 7 of the draft scoping report, which you're welcome to go and have a look at online. For the next couple of slides, I'm going to ask Sidika from Eskom to come and chat to these. He's got 5 slides on the technical aspects of the project.
Thanks, Ashley. Good evening, everybody. It's an honor to stand here and just present to you the key technical bits about what the project entails and what we will be aiming to achieve with that. And the slide really just giving you a pictorial view around the key components involved in the generation of electricity from a nuclear power plant. In the bottom left corner, we have the fission reaction just depicted, where a neutron reacts with the uranium atom, and that splits it in two. That process generates heat as well as an additional neutron, which is used to hit the next uranium atom, and that gives you a chain reaction or continuous the fission chain reaction to generate the heat that is found. What's important with us is how we control that heat in the reactor, and really what happens is in the reactor itself, that fission process is controlled, it generates heat, it heats the water, and that water in the circuit goes through what we call the steam generator, where it's cooled off and returned back to the core, or as we call it, the reactor, to cool the core off, and then that circles the first primary circuit. In the steam generator, the main important function subsequent to cooling of that water is also the generation of steam, which is then used to drive a turbine. On the secondary side of the plant, and that turbine spins and drives the generator, which creates electricity, which is then sent out to everybody, and what we experience. In terms of the rest of the circuit, the cooling from the steam that's generated in the turbine is cooled off in the condenser, and we use normally seawater or third leg of cooling to cool off the steam that's generated, and that water then is pumped back to the steam generator to process on the secondary side circle. So there's really three independent systems that's at play around water movement in the core or on the nuclear plant. One is cooling off the reactor, the other one is cooling the water in the steam generator, and then cooling the water in the condenser. They're separate systems, they're not in contact with each other, and really that's how we contain the reactions to make sure that the items are safe around it. So in the overall design of the plant, it's all managed by a control room, where the control room operators manages and really monitors all these critical components and reactions and take the appropriate steps to manage that safely. So the typical components of a nuclear plant, there's cooling systems, there's the reactor vessel itself, where the nuclear reaction is managed. The reactor core and the fuel, where the heart of the work really is around managing the chain reaction. We have a pressurizer that manages the pressure in the pressurized water reactor system. That's a critical component that we have to make sure everything stays in a controlled manner. Steam generators to generate the steam, which drives the turbine and then generates electricity from that, and that water is cooled off in the condenser loop. The next slide really just talks around, sorry.
There we go.
Thank you. Again, the same item just shown differently, and you'll find the detail in chapter 4 of the scoping report. But the plant in shown differently, you have the ocean works where water and cooling is coming off from ultimately to cool the water on the turbine side. But during construction, we will have cofferdams to start the initial part of the works, and that will be done on the ocean side. On the nuclear island, it's the construction of the reactor building, the containment building, then the structures and all the nuclear safety systems that's housed in that is captured in the nuclear island, and that's all the nuclear grade components and the highest quality level that we have on the system. We then have the power block, which we also call the secondary side, and that really houses the turbine walls and all the other auxiliary equipment to generate and support the generation of electricity that they can get set out through the electrical infrastructure, through the 400 kV or 765 kV lines out into the national grid. And that supports the national transmission systems and the lines associated with that. A lot of cooling water systems is installed. We're also envisaging through this project the introduction of a seawater desalination plant to help us maintain an off municipal desalination or potable water needs through the desalination. And obviously we will be having a lot of water tanks on site to keep all the water safely in appropriate reservoirs to support that. And then there will be additional support infrastructure over the life of the plant that we have. Spent fuel facilities really to store the spent fuel, waste storage facilities around what is generated on site and managing those appropriately and disposing of those to the right channels. There will be a hydrogen or gas production plant on site to manage the gas needs of what will be required to support the plant. And obviously you need to get to site and you get off site, so entry and egress, internal access roads and emergency exit roads will be constructed, as well as the general office, canteens and facilities to support the rest of the plant. And these components really does put together the full picture of what the plant looks like on that. One of the questions that keeps coming up in terms of what you will find in the documentation is what we define as the plant preference envelope. At this moment in time, we have not yet selected a specific design because we have not yet looked at the market conditions around that. But we have specified in terms of the plant parameter envelope. And what that really does is provides a global envelope around what you would need the plant to be able to perform when we do an assessment of the plant design. This is an approach that's used internationally. It doesn't preclude us from using any technology, so it's neutral to any technology type that's out there. And when we select the final technology, it's got to meet the requirements of what we've specified in the plant parameter envelope. So the EIA will assist us in maximizing the credible impacts into the plant through the use of the plant parameter envelope, and it does provide us with some realistic upper limits on what the plant, the future plant can and cannot be doing when you do that assessment. It bounds, like I said, it's an envelope, so it bounds us in certain criteria where we specify specific outputs, seawater requirements, what the footprint would look like, and what the discharge limits and the like is. And those will all be confirmed through the specialist studies that needs to use this plant parameter envelope in supporting us with the design envelope of the BA. Within these limits, it looks around quite a lot of in detail items around the geophysical, geotechnical criteria that's there, impact on water and marine life, biodiversity, ecology, and a whole lot of other items that would be there. The whole intent is really is safeguard and commitment, so that when we select a specific plant or specific technology, it's got to fall within the parameter of the envelope of the plant parameter envelope. If it does not, then we would need to revisit the whole validity of the EIA, and that's a key item for us on why the plant parameter envelope works for us in terms of keeping our options open and why to make sure that we do not deselect inappropriately at this moment in time on that. In terms of the just generic plant fee safety features and the design philosophy that we do apply in the envelope that we look at, in terms of what we're looking at as Eskom from new plants, is really making sure that the new plants are more advanced, that they use what is more what we call passive safety systems. These are systems that's been designed and built and constructed to work without electricity or any major human action that's required. So it's really relying on simple items of physics, gravity, fed systems and the like, so that we use the natural forces of nature to support us through a passive support to make the safety systems work that it does. We're looking at simplified designs, so the less probabilities of breaking, and really those are there to simplify not just the life of the operators, but the whole design philosophy of the plant of our worker. We still maintain the defense in depth concept. We'll be looking at multiple barriers of defense to support us in achieving the safety objectives of the plant and the safety systems that's there to support the plant. And that's a key component that we really just make sure that does keep on providing us the support that we need. A key item is what we call a low core damage frequency. That's clear the probability of an incident happening on site. Keep that as low as reasonably possible, and to drive all design features around giving us the best core damage frequency that we can have in maintaining the plant. It's a statement of safety, and it helps us with the emergency planning and the plant safety system design framework. Another key item is really making sure, and this is some of the learning that we've had, that the plant is robust against extreme events that can occur, and that takes into account what's happening in the local region around anything from an extreme weather perspective, and to make sure the plant is able and capable of dealing with those type of events. And finally, also redundancy. And redundancy is an important concept that builds on from the defense in depth principle, where you have redundant sources of power or water to fulfill the safety needs of what you need to do around that. And that really does help us in terms of managing the overall design philosophy of the plant, making sure that we have diverse and redundant ways of meeting a specific safety objectives in the design of the plant. And that helps us to through alternatives that we have in terms of the safety analysis of the plant. I think that's me for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Right, so moving on.
Excuse me, before you start, could I just ask that you would please make sure that that microphone is giving you all it can?
Okay, is this better?
I was struggling with some of the volume.
100%. Is this better? You can hear me?
Better if you speak closer, yes?
Okay, wonderful.
Down.
Put it
Down
down.
a little bit.
Towards you. pull it towards you.
How's that? Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. Just, yes, thank you for raising that. I want everybody to be able to hear clearly. Okay, so moving on into the EIA. As part of the EIA, we are required to look at alternatives, and we have a couple of different types of alternatives that we are looking at. We have siting alternatives, we have energy alternatives that we've looked at, and design alternatives, and also the no-go alternative. In terms of siting, we have two sites, Bantamsklip and Taspint. We've looked at energy alternatives in the scoping report, looking at all the different types: nuclear, coal, renewables, gas, and there's quite an extensive write-up in Chapter 6 on all of those alternatives in the draft scoping report. And then there's various design alternatives. We've got footprint alternatives, cooling alternatives, water intake and discharge alternatives, dredging activities and excavation and associated spoil disposal alternatives, freshwater supply alternatives, and also brine disposal alternatives. So we've also discussed all of those in the scoping report. And then, of course, an important one that we must include is the no-go alternative. So that is, what happens, what is the alternative if it doesn't go ahead? So we have to look at that as well. In terms of the siting alternatives, we have Bantamsklip. I think you guys more or less know where this is, being part of in the Western Cape yourselves. So Kranspy is going off the top edge of the map. We've got Pearly Beach, then Bantamsklip site in the middle, and then the Abalone Farms there, Buffelsjapspy in the south. And in the Eastern Cape, we've got the Taspint site, which is nestled between Cape St. Francis and Oyster Bay. You'll see that there's been a lot of specialist input. Chapters 8 and 10 of the draft scoping report outline the baseline conditions that the specialists have already identified, as well as their preliminary impacts that they've identified to date. We are also working in a different system now where the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment have a new tool called the DFFE's screening tool that they require to be downloaded and implemented for every single EIA in the country. We've downloaded those, and those bring up the different impacts that the DFFE from their tool determines are important and what specialist studies they are going to request. So this slide it's got quite a lot of information in it, but you'll see that there's a whole lot of specialist studies that are in bold on the slide, and those are the specialist studies that are required by the DFFE screening tool. Then you've got a lot of studies that are not bold, which are extra studies that we have added, that we have determined that are important as well. Those with 2 stars on them are all specialists or peer reviewers that were also involved in the Nuclear One process. So you'll see that we have a mixture of specialists on the project, some that were involved previously and some new eyes as well. All right, in terms of the specialists involved. We have the specialists divided into various categories: physical environment, biodiversity and ecology, water resources and supply, social, economic and land use, heritage and sense of place, human health, safety and risk, infrastructure and services, and then waste, climate and long-term impacts. So we've got a lot of, I think there's about 25 or 26 specialists coming. There were 24 involved in the scoping phase, and there's a number of extra ones coming in the EIA, economic, tourism, beyond design, safety analysis, etc. So there's a couple that will be done for the EIA itself. So have a look at the reports. They've outlined the baseline for both Bantamsklip and Taspint, and they've done preliminary impacts from the information that they have currently. We've also developed 2 sensitivity maps, one for each site. This is of the Bantamsklip site, and this is outlined in Chapter 8 and 9, actually, of the draft scoping report. You'll see here the red areas are what they call critical biodiversity area 1s, which are the most important in terms of the Western Cape biodiversity sector plan. The big green area that goes in between is a protected area, various different protected areas that are in the area, and then we've also got the sort of the hashed area along the coast, which shows where there's some heritage sensitivity that has been mapped. This doesn't just stop there, so I must just warn you, with the heritage specialist is well aware that the heritage sites carry on both north and south of the project sites. They've specifically looked in those areas to really go in and see what is there. The same on this map as well. You can see that at the Tasman site, there's a small protected area there to the east of the site, and then we've also got the heritage sites along the coastline, and some CBA 1 and 2 areas surrounding the site there as well. In terms of key issues, these are all outlined in Chapter 10 of the report, so feel free to go and have a look in the lot of detail that's there. There have been a number of impacts identified that are potential, and will be looked at in more detail in the next phase. We've looked at, so far from a biodiversity point of view, there's sensitive terrestrial, freshwater and marine ecosystems that have been identified and impacts that go around with that. There's socioeconomic impacts, both positive and negative, benefits and local community impacts, job creation, property values, etc. We've also looked at heritage and visual impacts, sensitive coastal landscapes, cultural heritage landscapes, etc., and the impacts that are surrounding those. The physical environment, geology, groundwater, flooding, coastal processes, that's all in there as well. Health and safety, so emergency response, public safety considerations, and obviously long-term issues like climate change and waste management. So those are all detailed in that Chapter 10. And what will happen next? We will relook, reevaluate, and they will look at the potential impacts and see if they need to change or be updated, or depending on what new information they get, they will do more site visits, gather more information, and then identify the exact impacts that they're looking at. They will also look at more firm and fast mitigation measures that would be recommended. At the moment, there are some suggested recommendations in terms of mitigation measures, but those would all be firmed up in the next phase as well. So there's a chance here for you guys yourselves to have a look at those impacts, have a look at the mitigations that are being proposed at the moment, and provide comment on that. In terms of the scoping phase, because we were looking at 2 sites, the specialists were asked to go and have a look at both Bantamsklip and Taspit, and to have a look at new information. So many of them went back to site to confirm what had been done before, and in the case of where we had new eyes, they went and looked for themselves. They used some of the older information that was available, saw if it was correct, still updated where necessary, and then we asked them to pick a preferred site from their particular aspect. And this is outlined in Chapter 11, which is the plan of study for EIA in the draft scoping report. And each different specialist picked their choice. A number of them were clear in terms of their preferred, and many of them actually stayed fairly neutral, saying either site, from our point of view, either site will work. 4 studies clearly picked Bantamsklip. 2 studies said Bantamsklip, but Taspit will also be okay. 8 studies clearly picked Taspint, and the rest remains neutral. So either site will work in terms of their study. And in terms of our overall recommendations from the scoping phase, looking at the site readiness from the NNR point of view in terms of Bantamsklip, there's a number of gaps in terms of the studies that still need to be done on the licensing time, licensing issues there. Closing those gaps would be significant time and cost on that. We also looked at the grid integration of both projects. So where are they in NNR readiness for Taspint versus Bantamsklip? Looking at grid integration opportunities for Taspint and Bantamsklip. Bantamsklip is definitely a higher risk at this stage and a lot more expensive due to the remoteness of the transmission integration. I think the closest decent point to connect to is about 400 kilometers away. Also looking at what's in and around the areas and looking what the specialists had to say. And at this stage, our recommendation to the competent authority is that we don't move the Bantamsklip site into the EIA phase, and that we actually focus on the Taspint site for the EIA phase itself. This does not mean that Bantamsklip is not a viable nuclear site in the future, but at this stage, it's not ready and it's not feasible at this stage. So our recommendation to the DFFE is that Taspint moves forward, but this recommendation is subject to public comment as well as DFFE approval. So we need both to move to see if that recommendation will move forward. And I think that's me in terms of just giving you a summary of the draft scoping report and where to find what you need. The draft scoping report is on the WSP website. It is also on the WSP Data Free website, which you're welcome. There's QR codes in and around for you to also scan and have a look at, and they're also on your BIDs that you took, the documents that you took at the door, and also on the presentations that you took. So I think that's me, and back to Tony for the Q&A.
Thank you. Let's give the presenters a hand for sticking to the time. That's awesome. So we can have a little bit more discussion. I wonder if this thing can watch. There's also a roaming mic stand here all the time. There we go. Thank you. Right, so we'd like to hear from you. We've already mentioned the QR code that you can scan to register, and then there's also links to the WSP website. I'm just going to quickly page to the slide. There's a link for the WSP website, and then there's also a data-free website where you can access all the same documents free of charge. It won't cost you data, and then we will also upload the official recording of the meeting, the minutes, everything will also be uploaded to the website. There's also audio recordings in the different languages mentioned of the non-technical summary of the draft scoping report, so feel free to go and have a listen to that as well. Right, so without much further ado, I'm going to open the floor for questions, and let's please keep the meeting conduct in mind. I'm not going to go through it again. I'm sure that is not necessary. Right, so Tumi's got the roving mic. If you have a question, please raise your hand. Lady at the back, gent at the back, and then just state your interest or your organization, please, so that we can record this for the minutes.
I'm just worried about how you went about choosing venues for feedback. We're from Tesla-Stal. At the moment, they say that there's about 1,350 people living in Tesla-Stal. It's not. There's way more. It's more than 6,000 people living there. But a lot of the community does not have transport. There's no ways that they could get here this time of night to Hermanus. it might only be 30 kilometers, but when you don't have transport, it's a lot. And I was just wondering, how did you choose venues, and how were these people that were unable to get here going to be pulled into this assessment or this process?
Thank you. Fair question. Let me take the gentleman's question as well, and then we will give the team a chance to respond.
Okay,
Just your name, sir?
sorry, Mark, also from Tesla's Dock. So I was wondering about the grid integration points. They don't seem to be very presented on any of the maps. So I was wondering sort of what routes those would take and why that doesn't form part of the studies for all the impact stuff. Because you clearly can't build it without connecting it to the grid.
Okay, thank you very much. Ash, can we respond
to Mello for the identification
of the venues? Okay, so thank you.
So with the venues, we used the previous process as well to help in identifying the venues, but also we used key areas that are close to the project site. That's how we identify the venues.
The reason I'm asking the question is, in the 2011 proposal, the pylons are going to run straight through Tesla's Dam. It's like right through the community. The community should know about this, they should know about the impact. And it's not for us to go up there and tell them, it's for you guys to inform them.
I can answer some of the question in terms of the power lines. Deirdre, from Eskom side, would it be yourself to add on if need be? Okay. So the first reason, so at the moment, the power lines are not included in our scope. It's actually going to be a separate EIA. It would need to be a separate EIA. One of the reasons behind that is because it will be a different applicant. So it will be the National Transmission Company of South Africa and not Eskom Generation, which is the applicant for the actual nuclear facility. The other reasoning behind it is that the impacts can be very, very different. And also it makes the documents and the process so much longer and so much more complicated. So we do tend to split them. The main reason from a legal point of view is because of the applicant. However, what I can say is that we do look at it in the EIA and make comment on it, even though we're not doing the full impact assessment. I do recall a few years ago, I was actually part of that EIA when they did start the EIA for the Bantamsklip power line a number of years back. It was though stopped. They did stop it. So at the moment, I don't actually think there aren't any corridors that are sort of identified to link to the major the grid from the Bantamsklip area. They were there a number of years back, but at this stage, I think that's all gone back to the drawing board. So at this stage, there's not a power line coming through the town, but I think I can hand to is that okay? There we go. So I hope that gives you some comfort.
Sorry, so I just want to get back to the lady at the back who is concerned about the communities getting access to information. I'm sorry, I did not hear your response. Could you just repeat it quickly?
And I also just want to add one thing on the meetings. So Tumi can respond again, but just also to add that we are going to be having 2 virtual meetings still, which people will be able to join should they not be able to be here. I know it's difficult for local communities, but but there are going to be those options as well.
Thank you. I think it's an important point, and I just want to make sure that we've recorded that point. Natasha, thank you, because I do think it's critical to take that forward in the process. Thank you. So we've had a hand here, and then there at the back, these two gentlemen. Thank you. So just your name and your affiliation, please. Thank you.
I'm Pierre Sudier. I am a retired electrical engineer. I have been involved with some work done at Kuber. And I've got 16 questions, but the first one is why not Kuber? Because a lot of the assessments have already been done there, they've got lots of space there, they've got, yeah. And it's not been mentioned why Kuber is not a considered site for further development of another nuclear reactor.
Okay, thank you. Got that? The gentleman there at the back will take that question, the next question.
Q&L Overberg District Municipality. My question would apply to both proposed sites and I suppose also to Kuberg. Waste disposal, I don't see any detail. Is the Northern Cape disposal site the only one? And in terms of transportation, what sort of safety features and factors would apply there?
Thank you. So Ash, I'm going to refer to you. Why not Kuberg? Is that Eskom? Or
I can take some of it and Eskom.
Okay.
I must maybe just
Shall we do a
shared response?
Okay, so Kuberg is on the cards. It is already authorized. So the Delafontein EIA was the site authorized during the Nuclear One EIA. Do you want to add to that, Deirdre?
Yeah, I think, good evening again everyone. I think we covered it at the beginning that we said that there was an authorization for Delafontein at the last EIA process. It has been taken on review in court recently, but the plan remains that Kuberg would be the first site developed, followed by a second site, and that this process is looking at the second site that would be developed for a nuclear power station.
Thank you. And then the second
Right,
question.
and in terms of the waste, which is a good question, yes. So there's waste, and I think Sidika might add to this. There will be low and medium level waste storage on the site, and then I think the high level goes to. Other way around, high level on site, you see how I'm getting confused, and medium and low go to the Northern Cape. So yes, there is actually still only the one site that will take.
Yeah, that's correct. The site in the Northern Cape called Falklands is the licensed facility for the disposal of low and intermediate level waste. And that has been through the normal processes that governs that. So all waste will be packaged safely and follow the same protocols that we have for use at Kuberg to transport those levels of waste through to that facility, and the appropriate safeguards will be in place.
Yeah. And then just...
If I could ask, am I reading it right, that the high level waste would remain on site?
On site.
Permanent feature?
No, it's not a permanent feature. The ultimate disposal facility is also destined to be Falklands, and once that license is finally granted to that facility, will the waste then be transported to that facility? That's correct.
Just to add on to that, you will see in the scoping report there is an appendix called radioactive waste and transport. And you're welcome to go and read that, and there'll be an update to that study in the EIA.
Thank you. Sorry, just want to make sure there was a hand here, and sir, did you have your hand up? Okay, so we've got this gentleman here, number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. Thank you.
Okay, my name is John Bristow, I'm a geologist, and we recently had an interaction with an SRK consultant, and very openly, nothing secret or anything like that, who does a lot of work for nuclear installation. Can you hear? Okay, can you hear? I'm sorry. Okay. Anyway, so we recently had interaction with, as I say, a nuclear expert, SRK, which is a very well-known local and international consulting company. And one of the options, of course, is Dainfontein, but it makes no sense to have two nuclear plants, from my understanding, standing next to each other. If there's an event, an unfortunate event with one of them, you straight away impact the generator next door. So from a pure risk point of view, I don't see that being sensible to anyone. And if you look at the work, the extent of the work done at Tastement, it really is what my insight, and I know there's a lot of stuff on the Eskom database aside from all this, but if you look, and we know some of the people, some of the young geologists, for example, from the CGS and international people who've worked at Tastement, I mean, the quality of work and all work is just phenomenal. And I think, one of the things that we find in our community today, there's so much negative, whatever it is, whatever you want to call it, negativity about our electrical producer, about Eskom, just about every state organisation in this country. Well, if you look at the work, and particularly the consultants who've done work on places like Tastement, it really is phenomenal, and I'll vouch for that. I'm very proud of my profession, and that's just the point I would like to add to the table here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Your point is well noted. Sorry, before we carry on, maybe just why two nuclear sites? Kuburg, why Kuburg and...
Good evening, and evening, John. Good to see you again. So when we did the previous EIA, we actually selected Tastement as the preferred site in the EIA, or it was proposed as the preferred site. But the authorities made the decision that they'd rather use the existing nuclear site to add another nuclear site. From a safety point of view, Sadiqa might be able to add some perspective from a risk safety point of view, but yeah, Sadiqa, sorry to put you on the spot.
No, that's quite fun. I think that's why I'm here to just help support. So from a safety perspective, it's always important from our side that we do diversify the risks that we have on the site. And geographic location and separation is an important consideration. Hence, we're looking for multiple sites where we would have the reactors deployed. It's to protect the one asset in case of an event, and you are geographically separated in another area where you would continue then providing reliable power to the grid while we look at the incident that has happened on the existing site. So it takes out that common cause failure mode if we do not take that into account. So that's why we're looking for alternative sites other than Kuburg to deploy our nuclear reactors on.
Thank you, Sadiqa. Lady in the yellow, thank you for your patience. Thank you, Jimmy, for running around.
My naam is Michelle. Ek woon in area tussen Teslasdal en in daai landbouarea, om te sê tussen die N2, R3 en 6 daai area. My bekommernis is ook in terme van die pillins. Ek wil weet, as julle hierdie, verstaan my dit in Afrikaans praat.
Dis doodreg, ons op vertel.
Hierdie gaan vanaand eintlik vir die opligting van die plant.
Praat 'n bietjie harder, net om nog.
My bekommernis is meer die pillins. Ek is ook bekommerd oor die opligting van die plant, maar die pillins, waar dit gaan hardloop, want nou is die twee environmental assessment studies nou gesplit. So as hierdie ding goedgekeur word, hoe kan dit goedgekeur word sodat jy weet waar die pillins, waar die power lines gaan loop? Ek weet as dit verby my huis gaan loop, dit is in die Oeverberg of in die landbouarea waar ek woon, is daar hier 'n huisie, doere huisie. Ons woon nie op mekaar nie. So dit gaan maklik wees vir die mense om hierdie pillins net hier verby jou te laat loop Tesla's daar, soos die dame gesê het, ek kan nie onthou of sy gesê het hoeveel mense daar bly nie. Daar is 'n community, ek dink julle gaan dit waag om die power lines sommer daar by hulle verby te laat loop, sommer nie, dit nie so nie. Maar gestel, julle besluit nou, hier kom hierdie power lines nou by iemand, een of ander boer se huis verby. Hoe gaan een ou wat daar woon nou opstaan teen dit en ek meen, hoe kan hulle iets oprig as hulle nie eers weet waar daai pillins loop nie? Ek wil graag weet, wat is die map van daai pillins? Hulle kan nie dit oprig sonder dat hulle weet waar daai goed gaan loop nie, want dit gaan nie regverdig wees nie. So, ja.
Baie dankie. So I'm just going to translate. I hope I do it correctly. If I don't, feel free to help. Actually, I'm not sure how much of that you got, but the main concern is that I also live in Tisselorsdal and in the rural area. And how can a decision be made regarding the development of a plant if there's no information about the pylons and where that will go? The people live far apart, and she cannot see how a single farmer will be able to stand up against the development of these pylons. So there is some form of concern that these pylons or a mapping of the pylons aren't available. So I know you've already responded to that question, but if you can maybe...
Got anything else?
Maybe just add.
So Ashley did mention that we have covered the transmission lines and more or less where they would go, not their route, but where they will be connected to in the environmental impact assessment. So there is some basic information there. But one of the main reasons that Buttons Clip is not being proposed as the site to go ahead in this phase is simply because we don't have enough information on the transmission lines. We are, on the Tasman side, we do have a clearer picture of where the pylons will be placed. So I think that's part of the motivation why this site is not identified to go into the next phase for this round. Yeah, your concerns are real, and we do need a little bit more information on that before we would go ahead.
Thank you. Sorry, can I just ask, are these related questions, or can we please move on to the people who had their hands up first?
Do you not need to translate into Afrikaans?
Oh, yeah. Can I translate into Afrikaans? Oh, you sorted. Thank you.
So I have got a related question.
You have a related question? Do you have a related question? No. Okay, so I'm going to take you next time. Sir, would you mind if I take this question if it's related, because it's related? The gentleman there at the back. Would it be okay for him to... Thank you.
Sorry, good evening. My name is Mike Lovell. I'm an interested and affected party because I visit the taste billet site regularly as a tourist for recreational purposes. But just related to the power lines, I hear you say that there's a lot of information already on the Tastepoint power lines. Where can we access that?
It's from a previous study, so we can just
Can you share that? Yeah.
From a previous study?
From the previous EIA.
Yeah.
So that can be shared.
Yeah, will somebody then agree to share it, please?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's not a valid environmental authorization currently, but there has been more information gathered on the connection for the Tasman site compared to what there was on the Buttons Clip site.
All right, okay. So then that will be shared, will it? Okay, that's great. Because I think my concern there is, and I haven't seen that report, is that it goes through the Bobbion's, the one I understand, goes through the Bobbion's Kloof, which is a World Heritage Site. So I'm not too sure where that comes from.
Okay, thanks.
I've got other questions, but
That's great. Thank you. We note that question and we will share the information accordingly, and I think our team will also look into that for our impact assessment phase. Right. That gentleman there at the back. Thank you. Thank you for your patience, sir.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Anton. I've got two questions. The one is in connection with the transmission line. If you separate the two issues, you might end up with a situation where the power plant gets approved at Bantamsklip, but then you have no way of getting the power out of there. So you'll end up with a situation where the EIAs on the transmission line could potentially stop the process or not stop the process. So I kind of feel that the two processes shouldn't be separated. It should all be one process that includes the transmission lines. My second concern is that you guys already stated that you will be recommending taste pint. That might well cause people not to take this process seriously. And as you say, that recommendation is subject to DFFE approval. So it means that we can go through this process. The public can kind of feel, okay, it's not going to happen here, and DFFE can just turn around Eskom can just turn around and say, well, we actually wanted that Bantamsklip. So that's my second concern. Thank you.
Thank you for those points.
The comments on the transmission lines definitely related. It is something that we will be we would definitely be discussing it more in the EIA. We may not be doing the full impact assessment, but we will be looking at it in terms of cumulative impacts. So there we will cover that, and I think we've answered that question. In terms of the recommendation for test pint at this stage, so the EIA process is a two-phase process. We are only in the first phase, and it's the scoping phase. So at this stage, we need to look at alternatives. The regulations require us to look at alternatives, but the alternatives can be of various different forms. It doesn't have to have a site alternative. In this particular case, we did have two alternative sites that we've looked at, and we have proposed the taste pint site to move forward into the next phase for detailed investigation and impact assessment. This is, as I said, it's not Eskom's decision whether it's taste pint or Bantamsklip. It will be the DFFE's decision. So Eskom is outside of that approval. They are the applicant and not the competent authority. The competent authority could say, we agree that Bantamsklip is not ready. We agree that there's no transmission integration, enough information. We agree that it's not the right site for now. We agree that you can look at taste pint into the EIA phase. They could come back to us and say, actually, we disagree. We think you need to look at both sites in the EIA. They can come and do that as well. So it is up to the DFFE to consider the recommendation and make a decision in terms of what sites or which sites are going through into the EIA phase. So we by no means finished with the EIA. We've still got a whole second phase to come.
Thank you. I assume that's a follow-up question. Anton?
Yeah, sorry. Actually, okay. Sorry, can you give me a moment to think about it? I want to come back to you on that.
100%. Can we carry on? These other questions, I think.
Just a related question to that one.
So So Mike is next. I just want to sort out the order. It's Mike, and then the gentleman with the red shirt, and then this gentleman, and then you. Okay. Right, I hope I remember. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, it's Mike again. Sorry, just to relate it to that, so what you're saying is that as of, after our comments have been incorporated, the next process will exclude Bantam's clip altogether. Because I agree with the gentleman, the perception will be that, oh, okay, they've already decided. So, what can we do about it?
So there is, this is the first phase.
Yes.
The specialists have been out, they've had a look at Bantam's clip and Tastement. They've each selected a preferred site in terms of biodiversity, flora, fauna, marine ecology, avifauna, etc., etc. We've put all that together, and Tastement has come up as preferred. Tastement has come up preferred in terms of various feasibility issues, transmission integration, NNR readiness, etc. And we have, through all of that, determined that the Tastement site is better at this stage for another plant, for the next plant as such. We need to now go and look at that in detail and do a full impact assessment with alternatives in terms of mitigation, cooling, how they're going to do the discharge, how they're going to do the disposals, all those other alternatives that we need to look at, the no-go alternative, and we put that into the EIA phase. So it is a two-part process, but as I say, the DFFE could come back at the end of scoping and say, we don't agree with your recommendation, look at both. So we sort of put the recommendation out there. It's not just the recommendation from the EAP, it's the recommendation from the EAP based on 24 specialists and their input that we've also received. So, and all the background information that comes into that as well. So yes, there is going to be a second phase.
Excluding Bantam's clip. Excluding
not
necessarily, depends on what the DFP. At this point, we've suggested not Bantam's clip because it's not yet ready.
So just to remind everyone that this is an active environmental impact assessment process and no decisions have been taken yet. Right, so Anton, have you remembered your question? Thank you, Tumi. Thanks for the others' patience. Let's just give Anton a chance.
Yeah, sorry about that. I just wanted to get my thoughts in line. My concern is that, okay, let's say it doesn't happen now, but people are not taking this process as seriously as they should. And we've already had a meeting with some of the Eskom guys that indicated that eventually they want nuclear sites on nuclear plants on all the sites. Will this scoping report then be relevant if in future they decide, okay, they want to go ahead with Bantam's clip now?
Yeah, so if they want to go ahead with Bantam's clip in the future, a new EIA would need to be done, yes. A full scoping, full EIA, the whole process from scratch. Okay.
Thank you for your patience.
Hello, Johan van Skalkwyk. Maybe my question also now a little bit relates to what Anton's just been mentioning. My question is to Eskom. Obviously, nuclear, and everyone sitting here, we know it's the cleaner alternative and the easier perhaps. But at a costing view and the alternatives, is gas, firstly the question, alternative for power, or is it more to the mineral side as Namibia has shown with international interest in that, and by the look of it, we very much rich in gas along our coast, and it was on the cards for some time, and close by nice now. Is that still an alternative in the way that it can generate power? And also the other thing is the costing issue of nuclear plants. That money would most probably come from South Africa itself. But if you look at gas, it's an alternative to have international investors and have a kind of a bio thing with a partnership or something like that to save money. Is that alternative also?
Thank you. Heather?
Thank you. So what we rely on is actually the Integrated Resource Plan, which is the policy document that determines what will the energy mix be for South Africa. And gas is certainly one of the options. Gas is seen more as a transitional technology between renewables and base load, nuclear and the existing coal. So Eskom specifically is looking at a gas option. So we're doing an environmental impact assessment in Richards Bay for a 3,000 megawatt gas project, and that has also just started. So it's definitely part of the energy mix. And then in terms of cost, well, the Integrated Resource Plan has looked at that and modeled that and has determined what would the preferred mix of technologies be, and gas and nuclear are included in that. So they've got different approaches and different costs and profiles.
Thank you, Deirdre. And I suppose this is also described clearly in the alternative section, section 4, chapter 6 of the draft scoping report. Thank you, sir.
Yes, yeah, I also have a question about the linkage between the different EIAs. It's well known that the sea life is very sensitive to temperature increases in the water, and the coastal waters release permit, you said, is decoupled from this impact assessment. If they do that assessment and say the sea life will be affected substantially, can that can this whole project at either of the two sites?
So actually a nice easy answer. So only the permit application process is decoupled from our process. The actual studies are included in this EIA. So we have a marine ecologist, we have oceanography guys on the case, some very detailed studies already there for you to go and have a look at. I think if I recall correctly, I stand open to correction, because there was many impacts that were identified, but I believe the marine ones came in sort of high and medium, but after mitigation all moved to low. So they weren't actually as concerned as they thought they might be at the beginning. Also, the coastal discharge permit would also, like for example the water use license, requires the submission of the EA. I think it does require the submission of the EA as proof that the project has been authorized before they will issue the permit. So the two have to follow on from each other, but the studies that are required for the permit application are included in our studies. So there isn't really a decouple.
Thank you. Sir, thank you for your patience.
My name is Pat Hart. A couple of what I want to ask is actually half been answered already. First point I want to ask, and that is that Eskom are desperate for power, and so both these projects have got to go. And what are the timelines before we're going to get some power from any one of these projects? Can you answer that? But my main point is both sites have got to go.
Thank you, sir, for your comment. Time frames? Deirdre, maybe you can answer from a regulatory perspective, and then we can...
I can do EIA. Yeah. I can do EIA timeframes. I'm not so sure about the building part. But on the authorization first. The EIA timeframes, so we are in scoping now. We should get a decision on the scoping report by July. And then, as I said, the EIA draft would go out in September, and then that means we'll have, with the assumption that they will approve our request for an extended public review period in the second phase, we will be submitting the final EIA report in January of next year, which means then that they would give us a decision if If the project is a strategic infrastructure project, which we're waiting on the decision from that at the moment, then the decision should be made by March. If we don't get the strategic infrastructure thumbs up, then we add another 3 months onto that, so April, May, June of next year. So that would be the regulatory time frame, and no building would be able to be done before that happens. So, and then in terms of timeframes thereafter, I'll hand over to Eskom.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you. So as I mentioned, the integrated resource plan has a specific plan in terms of what needs to be executed. But our understanding and our plans relate to 5,200 megawatts to be executed by between 2035 and 2039. But that is a combination of the Danafontein site, the Tasman site, if that's the site that becomes preferred, and then also in the beginnings of small modular reactors placed at a site. We still need to do studies on that. And maybe just to mention, we are doing a strategic environmental assessment for placing small modular reactors at coal-fired plants. But that is a little bit longer term. But 5,200 megawatts by 2039.
Carry on with that. You must carry on with that.
So we must carry on with Danafontein and one more site, and then a small modular reactor. So not necessarily Buttonsklip and Tasman, but if we have Danafontein, which is the Kubik site, and another second site, that would be large PWR, pressurized water reactors, and then also starting to look into developing small modular reactors.
Thank you, sir. A related question, gentlemen.
No, don't worry, I'll speak up. Just quickly, so the first time we will see you for Buttonsklip, possibly again, if placement is approved, will be in 2040 something.
I think Eskom would hope it might be earlier than all jokes aside.
Thank you. Sorry, I just want to check, was there another hand?
Yeah, I've got other questions.
Okay, so your hand was up first, okay. And then we go to one.
It is known that power stations near the coast are particularly susceptible to geomagnetically induced currents, which is a consequence of space weather storms. I've been involved in some assessments done at Kuberg for the potential impact of space weather on the generator setup there. And I'm just cautious that this may be neglected in the environmental impact study to make a recommendation regarding the types of transformers and the resilience of the transformers that are proposed for any of these sites, since they are coastal sites and they may be worse affected by geomagnetically induced currents than any other transformers in the country.
Thank you. Ash, maybe you can just respond if this is being looked at as part of the EIA.
No, I would have to double check that. I don't know if Sadiqa's got some.
Sadiqa, do you have an answer?
I know we are looking at tsunamis, but not that.
Not that. Okay, so geomagnetic induced currents.
I think we'll take the question back around it. I don't have that on the tip of my tongue. But the majority of the installations that we do have, and then what the plant would be based on the site, would be similar to what we find on other international sites. And the bulk of all international nuclear sites are on the coast. So those are taken into account in the design of the transformer and the transmission network around that. We're not doing anything bespoke or new. It would be an existing installation that we would find on any other site. Okay.
Thank you. Mike?
Yes.
Sorry, can I just see if there are any other hands as well? Thank you. That lady at the back. Thank you next.
Thank you, Mike again. Sorry, I'm being a pain.
No, Mike, it's fine. You have to hold.
A comment before asking a question. The previous, the nuclear one process, I think quoted up about R1 trillion worth of costs, and that was a number of years ago. Is there any sort of thumbsuck figure for a cost of this nuclear 2 from that perspective? Because it was R1 trillion then. I think it was R1 trillion, and I'm just wondering where the money's going to come from.
Good question. I'm going to run to Eskom to answer. Should I put you on the spot? It's speculation.
You haven't got a request for quote, I understand it.
Do you have any indicative costs?
You must have some sort of thumbsuck or 1 trillion, 3 billion?
I don't have an indicative cost, but the IEP did look at some costing associated with that, and that would be the bounding case of what we're looking at. But we can't really comment on that until we get the financial or go to the market to get the price and take that into account into the cost effectiveness of the procurement process to deal with that. So it would just be speculation if I give any figure at this moment.
I understand that, but if it comes in at 10 trillion, you must have an idea.
Not at this stage.
Not at this stage. Okay.
Not at this stage. The concern is noted, and I'm sure that when that figure is known, the cost impact to the consumers will also be made known. Thank you. Thank you, that lady at the back. I'll come back.
Okay, no problem.
I think we do have a lot of questions.
No, relax.
Hi, my name is Louise Dahl. I'm also from Testastal, so I'm here representing the community that can't be here this evening. You mentioned that there would be an opportunity to do online discussions. The problem with that is most of our community will not have access to computers or internet, so the large majority of them will still be kept out of this discussion. And since we do not know where those power lines are going to be, should the next stage come back as no, you need to investigate both options, that puts us in a bit of a sticky position, because you can't decisively tell us that the pylons will not be coming through our area for certain, and there is no way for them to comment or at least discuss with you like this. So how do we resolve that situation specifically? Is there any way to get someone out to the community centre or to make it accessible for them in a way where they can know how this will affect them specifically and have a say on that matter?
Thank you. That's a very valid concern that you have, and I'm sure Ashley will respond in terms of where information. Wait, before you take the mic away, I just have a question for you.
Yes, of course.
My turn. Sorry. I'm sure Ash will share where and how the information was made available. But if you have any recommendations in terms of how the team can best reach out to the community, we will really appreciate that as well. Thank you.
Honestly, it's the easiest way to do it would be to call a meeting at the community centre. Okay. Alternatively, you can get in touch with the CPF for the area and they can disseminate information, but again, most of that information will get to the farming community, not so much the local brown community.
Okay.
And they don't have as much access to technology, so that puts them at a disadvantage. But they would be largely affected by this, so it would be negligent not to ensure they are brought in on this.
Okay, excellent, thank you. I think we should also make a note to just get in touch with the ward councillor so that we can follow through on this point. Yeah. Thank you.
I think I've also just will look at Deirdre when answering this as well. It's an idea. So the first thing is, in this current process, I know that there's not much information available for the transmission lines that we know.
which is one of the reasons why it's not a great idea at this stage, because that information is just not available at this point. However, for the local community to at least be aware of what's going on in this process, if they go onto our website with a mobile phone, so I'm sure most of them have a cell phone, they can scan the QR code for the data-free website, and anything that they look at on their phone will be absolutely free. They can have zero data on their phone, and they'll be able to look at the whole report. In there's a non-technical summary. It's a 5-pager, which is in English, Afrikaans, and isiXhosa. There's also an audio version of that non-technical summary that they can listen to. So they can just have some idea of what's going on with the process and with the project itself. That literally gives them a little 2 or 3 paragraphs, maybe 5 paragraphs per chapter of the report, a little summary of each chapter, so they at least have the basic idea of what the project is about. And that they can do free of charge off their cell phone. So if someone can just help them from the community, like such as yourself, to scan the QR code, disseminate that QR code can be sent to everybody. They can just scan the QR code, go onto the data-free website, and they can have a listen and download anything that they want. So that is an option for them. It's absolutely free. We pick up the data costs. Okay. Then, and then on the second bit is, if the DFFE came back and said, sorry for you, you're looking at both sites in the EIA, then it would be something that we could consider adding a meeting to the community in the EIA phase to come and speak to them. But I think, as you say, if it's not going to be discussed during the EIA, then we leave it for now. But at least they do have that opportunity to go onto the data-free website and get some information that's not going to cost them anything. Okay.
Thank you. Right, so can we just see who has not had an opportunity to ask a question or to contribute a comment yet? Thank you. So I'll get back to the two of you, but I just want to make sure everyone has an opportunity. Thanks, Dean.
My name is Richard Ketteringham. My question is, does the EIA look at the impact that traffic through Hermanus will happen if they decide to construct it many times at Bottomsclip?
So already there has been a scoping report done. So if you go, I can't remember which appendix it is, so please. But there is a, if you go into the scoping report, you'll see that there's a traffic and transport appendix, there's a Taspin study and also a Bantamsklip report already, but scoping, so they have already looked at it. And if we get approval to drop Bantamsklip, then they won't look at it further at this stage, and they will do a detailed traffic report on the Taspin side. If we have to look at both, then they will have to do a detailed study in terms of the traffic and the transport from the Bantamsklip side as well. I believe previously there was studies done in the previous study which looked at Bantamsklip. It's also one of the reasons at the time, I think Solaris Pass was a problem. And there was options of things like barging equipment around the coastal side, which is not obviously ideal, complicated, but there was an issue with getting road transport through to here. I think Taspin is easier because things can land at Kucha and go to the site, that side. But they will be looking at it in more detail. It is one of the special studies that is included. I hope that helps answer your question.
Thank you. Anyone else who haven't had an opportunity yet? See, Anton? Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, I just want to come back to the one issue. If this, your scoping recommendation is accepted by DFFE, that means the process stops there. Can you confirm that? Or?
For Bantam's Klip?
Yes.
So the process at this stage would stop for Bantam's Klip. For now, for the second site, it would stop. But it doesn't, maybe I rephrase, the site is not fatally flawed, and it is still open for consideration in future as a site for Eskom. So it does mean that if at this stage our recommendation is approved for detailed study later, then we would focus our EIA phase on tastament, and if then Eskom down the line want to still look at Bantam's Klip, they would have to start a brand new EIA.
So from Eskom side, they will need to, okay, from Eskom side, it's only Bantam's Klip or tastament at this stage. And if they want to do both, it will be a new it will have to be a new process.
Yes.
Am I correct?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Can I hand over to this gentleman and Mike? Thank you, Mike.
Pierce here. I just need some clarification on two of the terms that I saw on some of the slides. The one is regarding redundancy. And I think it was in Sadiqa's slide, but there was not much said about it, and then I see on the notes it says avoid redundancy. So I'd just like to understand what is going to be avoided in terms of redundancy. And then in Afrikaans there's a term voetspoor alternatiewe, which I have no idea what it means. Can you just clarify that, please?
So I think while we give... Do you wanna? Okay.
Now, redundancy is an important part of the design that we're looking at. I don't know if there's a typo in the translation, but it's not avoid redundancy. It's a key design feature that we're looking for in the plant, to have multiple diverse and redundant systems available for us. Wat is dit in Afrikaans?
Okay, so
roughly 70 staan daar voetspoor alternatiewe en
yeah. Actually, so that's footprint alternative. Maybe not the best. It's very difficult to translate these English terms into Afrikaans. So apologies if we may have used the wrong word.
That's a very direct translation.
It's very direct. But it basically shows it would be essentially the layout of the site. So maybe the island goes here and the supporting infrastructure here, or combat or something slightly different to make best use of the site. So it's basically the layout or the footprint within that tastament area where it would sit.
So I did promise Mike can have the next question, and then I'll do that.
Sorry, I'm busy. Sorry, I have been making trouble for you guys. Sorry, I'm aware at Tasteford, I don't know the situation at Bantam's Klip, but at Tasteford there is there are floods of underground water. Masses and masses of water underground, fresh water. And I note that both plants need desalination plants. Now, those are hugely expensive, but more to the point is the ability of Eskom or the contractors to stabilize the ground, because you've got this flowing underground water, constant flowing. And I believe it actually comes, the water source, we've got a little shack there, and we draw water from the dunes. That water has been traced to Kuruman, believe it or not.
Sure.
And that's how far the water has travelled. I mean, in the middle of the desert, but that's where the underground water originates. So I don't know how expensive it'll be to protect the plant from the flowing water. Because if there's a leak in the wall, like in Holland many years ago, and somebody put a finger in a hole, and that's not going to work this time around, because it's going to be underground.
So are you worried about the protection of the plant or the plant's impact on the groundwater?
Both.
Both.
Both. But worried about both, and the fact that there's going to be a desalination plant there, and I'm not too sure what happens to the salt, what happens to that afterwards. The other brine together. All right.
Thank you. Do you want to respond as well? Okay.
So just there's 2 studies that will look at that. We have a freshwater supply study, as well as the groundwater, the geohydrology study. So please feel free to go and have a look at the scoping reports of those. And then they'll obviously be doing a detailed study of that, which will also include the desalination option. In terms of the brine, there's a couple of alternatives for that in terms of disposal, which we'll be investigating in more detail in the next phase.
Right. So all the answers coming.
There's a lot of answers in the next phase.
Yeah, everything's coming. It's coming.
It's coming.
If I can just comment on the aquifers, it's an important point. That aquifer has again been extensively studied and will be to large part protected. And just to put it in perspective, and I can assure you that water doesn't come from Kuruman. And if you're interested, and this is a diversion, but on Friday there's a gentleman, Dylan Blake, talking about our aquifers at U3A at 10 o'clock. Come and listen. It'll be world class. Okay, so if you happen to go along this mountain in front of us, it's a fault scarp. And if you go through our sewage works out into the ocean, there is fresh water running into the ocean from this huge fault line and incredible aquifers that sit at the base of the Table Mountain sandstone, the big white mountains behind us. We currently get 30-35% of our fresh water, potable water, from the underground aquifers, and that'll be the subject of the talk on Friday. So aquifers in the Table Mountain sandstones, the Cape Fold Mountains, are extensive. They will provide us with fresh water for the rest of eternity if you look after it. Another fascinating area is the Steenbras dams in the Steenbras Valley. There are huge faults and structures running through that valley. Those structures go out across Clarence Drive into the Southern Ocean, and again, speak to divers who dive there, they'll be diving and suddenly they've got no buoyancy because they hit this big freshwater outflow. So our aquifers are extremely important, but I've seen some of the information, done a tastament on the aquifers, and again, it's substantial. You know, our aquifers are not to be taken lightly.
Thank you, John. So, Mike and John, I suggest you to get together after the meeting to exchange details about this webinar that's coming up, or this session. Thank you.
Hi, sorry. On your slide 14, the one where there was the diagram of the proposed components of a power station, it had something called a spoil pipeline to ocean or beach. What exactly would be pumped out of that spoil pipeline?
Ashley, do you want to respond?
It's just, yeah, I think so. It's the. So
you just
it
go
would
to
be,
the slide.
yeah. So there's alternatives of this as well. So it's the spoil from basically the excavations of the actual site. So it's more for construction purposes. And there's 2 options that we need to investigate in the EIA phase. One is to dispose of the spoil into the ocean, so that it goes into the ocean. And then the other option is to actually dispose of the spoil on, I can't remember which beach, one of the beaches close by to St. Francis Bay Beach, which basically will rebuild the beach because it's all been washed away. So there's 2 options. It might also need to be a combination of both, but it's only for the construction phase, and then it won't be used after that.
What would the spoil be? Just
basically sand. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Do you want to add?
Yeah, just in terms of, there were a lot of concerns raised in the last phase, and I think it's addressed in the scoping study, specialist study to an extent as well, is how would that spoil impact on marine life, and specifically the breeding of the chokka. The chokka was of more concern because there are fishermen in the area that fish chokka. So that was studied in detail to determine how the sand spoil being pumped out would actually impact on the breeding of the chokka. So that is covered in the studies.
And yeah, so that will be looked at in more detail in the EIA phase again. They did do it in the previous EIA, but they're going to relook and see which alternative, because the beach option, they may only need a little bit of sand. They might not need all the sand, so it may need to be a combination.
Thank you. I see we have 5 minutes left.
Sorry.
I know you have hundreds of questions.
No.
But just a reminder, while you may still think about questions you have or comments you want to raise as part of the close out of the meeting, you are welcome to have a look at the draft scoping report. It's quite comprehensive, and there is still time. So the comment period ends on the 5th of May. And please feel free to submit your comments in writing as well, or to send a WhatsApp or to contact the office. We will gladly accept your written comments or verbal comments. So any last questions? Please don't apologize for asking questions. We are here for you. No, it's fine.
Sorry, this one is a little bit of maybe a sensitive question towards WSP.
Yeah.
Because WSP and the independent contractors, specialists, were all involved in Nuclear One. Well, you said so.
Some of them.
The ones with double stars.
Some of them.
Yeah. And the question is, how independent truly can WSP and those repeat independent specialists be if you've already got a mental remembrance of what happened the first time, and now you're saying it's a brand new one? And related to that is, have there been any court cases against this process so far, or pending against this case already? I have no idea if there are.
So WSP wasn't involved in the previous EIA.
The
previous EIA was undertaken by GIB, and then I think the review was done by SRK. Do you know if I'm correct? The EIA review, yeah. So WSP is new eyes completely.
I take that back.
Okay.
Yeah, I take that back.
So we have, yes, used a number of the specialists that were part of the previous process, mainly because of continuity and because they have that information already. For example, the geohydrology guys, the hydrology guys, the freshwater supply guys, they have all the information. They've been studying the sites, both sites, for 10, 12, 15 years now. They have all the information at their fingertips. But they have gone into their archives and they've pulled up their old information and they've looked at it again. So they have done it. What we mean by independent is that none of them are linked to Eskom. They're all independent parties, companies from Eskom. They're appointed by WSP, so they are independent and continue to be independent. But for the sake of continuity, for certain of the specialist studies, it was important to keep that information flow, so that the continuity is there. But we do, as you saw, we have a number of studies which are giving new eyes. They are obviously looking at the previous studies as well, but we have had, all the specialists have gone back to the drawing board as such, and re-looked and updated where necessary reviewed, and yeah. And they have to do that because the design is not necessarily the same as what it was before. Okay.
And the land may have shifted or
Exactly.
Conditions may have changed.
And that's why we're doing public participation as well, because the local knowledge, the insight, the technical knowledge that our stakeholders have are absolutely invaluable, and that needs to be considered as well. Sorry, did I miss a hand?
The legal processes, have there been any yet?
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Sorry.
No, not in this particular process.
Not in this, okay.
Not at all. And then also to ensure independence throughout the process, every special study in the EIA phase has been peer reviewed.
Yes.
And maybe just comment quickly on the role of the International Atomic Energy Group as well. I mean, there's an oversight.
Not so much on the EIA side. We do take they don't really oversight in the EIA, but we do look at their guidelines and make sure that that the sites are ticking the boxes still. Yeah.
Right. Let's see. 8 o'clock. I think we've done very well.
Thank you.
Any last comments?
Thank you.
Then I would like to thank you for your time and for your effort and for being here tonight. Please spread the word, and we really hope to see you again when we conduct our next meetings, our virtual meetings, and also our next round. Mike?
When will the minutes be available?
Actually, I think I'm going to ask you.
Yeah.
It's going to take us some time to get all the minutes together. We have this week of meetings, and then we have another week of meetings.
No, I know you've got a whole bunch of them.
But they all have to be done before the 18th of May.
Okay, not before the 5th of May.
They won't be available tomorrow.
No, I'm talking about the 5th of May. Is that the deadline?
Thank you. Travel safe.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much. Thank you for putting up with me.
We're having more meetings this week. Question
Yes, I know.
nothing about nuclear. Why does it have to be in the nature? So the nature reserve is actually as a result of Eskom's actually own tomorrow.